Grand Rapids, Michigan is a mid-sized community that has long promoted itself as an all-American city. But pulling back the curtain reveals a much more complicated story. I'm Dr. Todd Robinson, author of A City Within a City, The Black Freedom Struggle in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The stories I and other historians, such as Dr. Randall Jelks, researched are less visible. They reveal a city within a city. It's about the legacy of Black resilience, dignity, individual and collective defiance, as well as ingenuity. In the face of managerial racism, benevolent paternalism, the progressive mystique, and the malleability of institutional racism in a city that is dominated by churches and businesses. It is time to uncover more of these hidden narratives and to bring these stories center stage.
We had an institution established by 4 brothers who had actually been in the military. I was walking down the street one day, came back from California, and they knew my older brother, called me into this house in the middle of the neighborhood on Jefferson near Delaware. I walked in and I almost passed out because books were everywhere, shelves of books. I go in and peruse and I see books written by Africans, and I didn't know Africans could write books because nobody had told me. The free store probably turned most of us on to our awareness of being African people and not Negroes, and that we had connections to the continent, and that we had a history beyond enslavement.
I've always known the number of significant individuals and the culture that comes from South High School. One of my personal favorites is Dr. Emmett Bolton. He's a graduate of Howard University. He's a dentist. He sued the Grand Rapids Operating Company and the Keith Theater for segregated seating, which in fact was a precursor many years before the Brown versus Board of Education decision right here in Grand Rapids. Again, people like Palmer James and Al Green. Palmer was someone who's my uncle, but helped Al Green get started in the business. Obviously, President Ford, who walked down Hall Street to make it into South High School, which is a street that I traveled. And we are excited to explore this in those relationships of those significant individuals, significant stories that come from South High School.
One of my favorite stories in the history of the Black struggle of Grand Rapids is the story of the mustache protest. It's a story of when over 400 students rose up in protest against a school system that was trying to oppress young people's swag. Can you imagine that? They weren't having it. Many of the leaders of that protest and that movement grew up to be the leaders in our community today.
In the early 1900s, born of discrimination, the Grand Rapids Study Club was a group of women who came together to support each other. Their weekly meetings of self-help and study soon evolved into a comprehensive plan devoted to improving the lives of the Black community. Their motto, "Growing Not Drifting," focused on education and economic development as a means of racial progress, and their work still lives on today.
And then there's the 4 businessmen who wanted to buy property outside the red lines in order to build a mixed community called Auburn Hills. It took years for that sale to finally go through, with help from Fountain Street Church and finally the Chamber of Commerce.
Grand Rapids, more people need to know about your collective stories. I am thrilled to announce my partnership with Grandstand Pictures to make a film about this remarkable yet complex city.